Welcome to Investors Insights. Our topic today is an end of a negative era. Yes, that's right. You heard me. And we're going to explain to you what we mean by the word negative. I'm joined by my distinguished colleague, Trey Booth. He and I have had a great meeting this morning. Bobby and Ty are out on other meetings, and we were looking at portfolios this morning, and Trey and I had some phenomenal conversation. Trey, really appreciate what you do here as Chief Investment Officer, heading up our portfolio strategies team. And let's talk about our Federal Reserve, Fed rates, and then elaborate on that in regards to the word negative.
Yeah, so as expected, last week the Federal Reserve met and made no changes to their interest rate policy. That we talked about that on Monday as what we expected to happen. So the Fed funds rate top end remains at 5.5%. They're still, in our view, fighting inflation. They also projected potentially 3 rate cuts this year. But really, where negative came into the play was another major central bank made a decision last week. The Bank of Japan raised rates there, and they finally raised rates above negative. That's right.
That's historic.
Yeah, that was historic. It has been an experiment in modern monetary theory experiment going back nearly a decade where there is negative yielding bonds. This chart shows you at one point there was over 18 trillion with a T, trillion dollars worth of debt that provided a negative yield. What that means is if you buy it and hold it to maturity, you are guaranteed to lose money. The return on that security was negative, and it was locked in, government guaranteed. This was an experiment in an attempt to boost growth, and what it ended up doing is boosting inflation for the most part. I think many central banks around the world are going to cheer today that we are no longer in a negative yielding environment in Japan, finally the last one to raise rates. The U.S., we went to zero, but at least we had enough, I believe, respect in our institutions to never go negative. And
I agree.
We've been rewarded for that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and we're thankful they didn't go negative. You just can't even comprehend that.
Absolutely. And so, this goes along the lines, though, of what we talked about during our Investor Insights presentation. That's what I want to put you on the spot on, because I've received several calls and emails from clients who attended our virtual Investors Insights. Mm-hmm. As well as from the standpoint of our in-person Investor Insights. I would really like to ask you to tie this in, because that was a phenomenal presentation. Give us some understanding that as how this ties in with the Treasury and other things going on. Yeah, one of the major points during our Investor Insights was focus around the risk of higher rates and how it's impacting our Treasury, because we are issuing a lot of debt at ever higher rates. And this decision by the Bank of Japan is enormous, because now we have another competitor for capital. The world competes for capital. And so you had a massive central bank, one of the largest economies in the world, issuing debt at a negative rate. Well, that didn't really compete with us. So savers can easily make a decision. I'm going to buy treasuries over JGB bonds. But now that they've removed their cap on rates, we now have another competitor. And I'll go back to the charts we showed during our Investors Insights. You can see that major holders of U.S. Treasuries for the last few decades have been the largest holder in the blue line on the left side of the chart have been foreigners, foreign governments. They've been owning our debt. They've been forced buyers of our debt because of our trade deficit, but then also because, especially since this negative yielding experiment that started in Japan and expanded into Europe. They had to, because we were only game in town with positive rates. They have drastically decreased their ownership of debt, and you can see on the right side of the chart who is buying our debt. It's not foreigners, it's not governments, it's no longer the central bank. It is investment funds, and investment funds like we do for our clients. We're price sensitive. We will only buy an investment that we feel like will provide a high enough return, and so we've seen the response to all these central banks and the Fed trying to keep interest rates where they are. We've seen a response by 10-year Treasury yields slowly drifting up. They hit 5% last year. The Treasury stepped in, pushed interest rates back down by issuing only short-dated debt. And interest rates went back down to 3.8%. That's very comfortable for the government to issue debt. But the 10-year Treasury's inching back up to 4.5%. Why is that? Because there's competition for capital. And the market came into this year expecting 6 rate cuts. If you have 6 rate cuts, that means cash, return on cash and federal funds is drastically lower than where it is today. So at 5.5, 6 rate cuts puts it down in that 4 range. So then it makes it easier to buy long-term debt. Well, if the Fed's not going to cut rates like the market expects, then that puts much more competition on our Treasury issuing debt, and that puts higher rates, and that's going to put pressure on policymakers to have to decide on how they're going to fund this government, because it gets more and more expensive to fund the government, and more of that funding goes to just paying off interest. And so it's something. Last week we got a big what they call minibus spending deal. Those things are becoming smaller and smaller, not because Congress doesn't want to spend your money. Congress wants to spend your money. It's because the market is slowly forcing them to be a little more fiscally responsible, because you have to have a buyer for all that debt you're issuing. And if you're going to buy it, it's going to have to be at a rate that's worth buying. And so that's something we've been focusing on at the end of last year and throughout our Investors Insights was, where are we going to find those marginal buyers for this debt and at what cost? And the Fed is having a lot to say to that. And then now the Bank of Japan is finally throwing their hands up and going to be a competitor out in the capital markets.
Yeah, and I thought that was an incredible explanation, because we've had people from last year into this year say, when will the Fed cut rates? And I think that gives great insight to our clients as to why we keep saying that's not going to happen anytime soon.
In 2023, the beginning of 2023, we showed this chart where the market expected the Fed to be cutting rates by September of 2023.
Right.
And we didn't at that time, we didn't expect that to be the case. Historically, inflation takes a while to kill once it really gets out of hand. The Fed really had to keep rates high. We're still dealing with higher inflation. Is it 9%? No, but it's nowhere close to 2% either, where the Fed wants it to be. And so until we get sustained lower inflation, the Fed's probably going to stay up here at this higher rate, and in higher for longer. Is actually not a terrible thing, as long as it's done within the context of bringing inflation down.
Yeah, well, it's actually prudent. It's actually shows that the Fed is responsible. Right. There have been times in my career where we've seen that's not the case. They caved to political pressures, emotional pressures that were out there in the public. And I think this Fed is held steady and accountable as to what they're doing. The other thing I just want to say to our clients and viewers is that also, in terms of accountability, we've been talking about this. Go watch our previous vlogs. We've talked about how we don't believe the Fed is going to lower interest rates. And we've continued to use that data and a lot of research and data we get here at File Plan Partners to navigate through all this and tie it to your financial blueprint. So you've just heard from the Chief Investment Officer at File Plan Partners. Trey, thank you. Thank you for what you do. The Portfolio Strategies Committee, I love being on that, and the debates and dialogue and doing these vlogs. And folks, we're going to continue giving you all kinds of information, not only through this vlog, which we ask you to forward to friends, family, colleagues. I mean, think about it. You'll be able to talk to others next time you're at a social gathering in regards to, as people say, well, the rates are too high, rates need to go down. You've got information here that you can share with others. And we appreciate those of you that forward our vlog to others. And then also on our social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, our podcast, YouTube, we continue to give information because we're frustrated educators. We want you to know why we're making the decisions we make here at File Plan Partners in relation to your portfolio, as we strive to see to it that all our clients have better, richer, fuller lives. We hope you have a great week. We hope you have a great Easter weekend, and we will be talking to you soon. So many blessings, so many things to be thankful for, and we're thankful for each and every one of you. Take care. Have a great week.